this one's just more of an interesting question in my head. Do you guys have to work real jobs when you get home off the road, or is a New Revolution the way is your career?
But, we don't have to work day jobs, but if economically this keeps going the way it does, I mean, it's not to say that we're suffering right now, but it's been tough. Like we've been fortunate. I've been fortunate for the last 10 or so years to be doing this for a living. Blessed. I mean, I'm not talking about being rich or anything or making tons of money. It's just being able to pay the bills,
Right.
like most people out there in any of their jobs. And that's doing what you love is priceless, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, no. Luckily, we've been fortunate not to have it. But I don't. People have to sometimes. And
Right.
people got to do whatever it takes to pay the bills. And sometimes when you get off the road, you gotta work.
Yeah, I've always found that concept so interesting. How we tend to look at you guys as living the life, and it's so wonderful, and you're on the road and you're doing your dream. And I always find it such a weird dichotomy that a lot of times these guys are going home and they're working pizza delivery jobs to make ends meet.
It's so true. I think the biggest problem I have with all of that is in order to do what we do, you have to have a really good boss, and you have to be able to work sometimes for a month.
Mm-hmm.
And for somebody to take you for a month, and what that is a vicious circle. It's not a good position to be in, because if anybody you go up, unless it's somebody you know personally, anybody you go to try to get a job for, all you've got to do is call your last boss and ask him how long he was here for and why you left, and that'll give them a reason to never hire you.
Right.
That's the vicious circle of being. Now, if you're a person who lives at home or is a regional or a local gigger, that's perfectly fine. They're not, because you can make your job every day.
Right.
But my big thing is my philosophy is if I have to focus on my job, which is to be a musician and write music and tour, and every other minute detail that's involved with being in the business,
Mm-hmm.
is you pretty much have no time. We wake up in the morning thinking about music. You go to bed thinking about music, and everything in between is music, and you dream about it.
Right.
So to me that's the only thing I know. I mean, obviously, my day will come where I will need to potentially, who knows what will take me after this. But that's the truth of the matter is you always have to take that all into consideration.
One more question for you here, Frank, before we call it a day. And this is my esoteric question. This is your chance to get on your soapbox or pedestal or anything you want. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you would like to talk about as far as you as a musician, perhaps, or about a new revolution, or something that you think is important for people to understand about your music, what you do, or anything that you think is important for people to understand?
I think it's probably one of the better questions I've ever had asked to me. I think I think the most important thing to derive, and not to sound like I'm giving a sermon here, but to derive from anybody who had the conversation with a touring musician or somebody who's got, given the shot to have a record deal or record professionally, I feel that obviously we are blessed with certain opportunities sometimes, and we've got to make the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing is this industry is tough, and the advice that I would give anybody is obviously realize that the sacrifice and the amount of dedication needed to succeed it's extreme.
Mm-hmm.
The right word to use. But the reward is where hopefully when you get to that point of when you get the great reward, that's when you feel everything is worth the while.
Right.
But when you're chasing the dream or you're doing what you love, that's where you realize that you have to let everything go.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things you have to sacrifice. I mean, you sacrifice personal life, family, everything in the middle, and that's how you live.
Right.
And the most important thing, is that you have to kind of stay focused on the prize and make sure that you're able to achieve your goals in the process. And a lot of the time is people might think that what we do is glamorous and we're sex, drugs, rock and roll, and
Mm-hmm.
We're touring in tour buses, and people are bringing the white linens in the backstage room with different colored M&Ms, and with and all the expensive foods in the world. It's not like that.
Right.
You have what we do anyhow. I always liken it to maybe below 5% actually get a shot at doing this.
Right. Yep.
And I say maybe get a record deal, and and I'm not slagging anybody who when Soul comes to town and the local band gets to open for them. I'm not saying that they don't have a shot. I'm saying somebody who gets a record deal, gets to tour, and gets to do all that stuff and has a legitimate shot. That's below 5%. Now, that people who actually make it, we're talking below, 0.0 whatever.
Yes.
And then that's where that's the reality. That I'm a pragmatist, so I learned to live with the fact that I'm proud and happy to have made it in the 5 percentile within the last 10 years of my career, and I've accomplished great things and seen met a lot of great people along the way, and that's what you got to take from it. That's the most important thing, and if you can be happy with that, then you should be in a good place.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today, Frank.
No problem. Thank you very much.